This isn't just a story about family, it's about a woman, me, Julia Carter, fighting for her worth in a world that consistently overlooked her, culminating in a moment of comeuppance that was both devastating and incredibly satisfying. I'm 36 now, born and raised in the suburbs of Gainesville, Florida, a place where the sun blazed brighter than the fairness in my own family. From the moment I could understand, I knew that in my parents' eyes, only one child was truly worthy of pride, and that child wasn't me. It was Lauren, my older sister, the one they proudly called the golden hope of the Carter family. We were only 3 years apart, but the real distance between us felt infinite. Lauren, with her naturally curly blonde hair and a gaze my mother praised as genius-level intellect, was always the star. And me? I was just Julia, with my sun-kissed skin and short brown hair, the quiet kid who scribbled on paper and knew how to stay out of the way when mom got upset. Since elementary school, every single family conversation revolved around Lauren. Her academic achievements, her piano recitals, her advanced classes. I remember bringing home a perfect score on a math test once, so proud, and my mother just glanced at it and said, "Your sister was doing this back in 2nd grade, Julia." It was then I learned to be quiet, to disappear when needed. While Lauren was chauffeured to ballet classes every Saturday, I stayed home, scrubbing kitchen floors and folding laundry. When she got her first iPhone at 16, I was still clinging to a hand-me-down flip phone from my uncle. My father, Greg, was stern and decisive, and to him, Lauren was his ideal replica, sharp, ambitious, a natural leader. He'd proudly tell his friends, "Lauren's had a business mind since she was a kid. Julia? She's creative but scattered. That artsy stuff doesn't put food on the table." I even won a statewide art contest once, a huge deal for me, and my mom's only response was, "That's nice, but don't let it interfere with your real studies, Lauren." Meanwhile, Lauren would get an average essay grade, and it was a small celebration at the house. I tried so hard to understand why. Was it because I was quieter? Not as classically pretty as Lauren? But the truth was painfully clear, they never saw me as the center of anything. Their love for me felt conditional: don't cause trouble. Don't ask for anything. Don't fail. Lauren, on the other hand, was loved simply for existing. When I was 13, Lauren was sent to an elite art summer camp in Massachusetts. It cost nearly $4,000 for 3 weeks. I just asked to take an acrylic painting class at the local community center for a mere $100. My mom shook her head. Waste of money. You should learn to type better so you can actually get a job later. So, by high school, I started working at a small bookstore. I bought my own school supplies, my own clothes, and eventually my first car, an old Toyota Corolla that I cherished like treasure. The day I drove it home, my mom just asked, "How many miles on it? Did you check the oil?" Lauren, though? She was gifted a bright red Mini Cooper for her 18th birthday. I was never jealous of Lauren, not in the typical way, but I carried a quiet burn, this feeling of being overlooked, brushed aside like an afterthought in the family portrait. Still, I didn't crumble. I learned to stand on my own, quietly but firmly. No one in my family knew I'd been drawing since I was 6 and never stopped. They didn't care that I was invited to illustrate for a local magazine at 17. All they cared about was that Lauren studied economics. Lauren could take over Dad's legacy. Lauren deserved it all. No one ever asked me what I wanted, and honestly, I stopped answering long ago. I left Gainesville the fall of my 18th year, carrying just a suitcase, a bag of sketchbooks, and a full scholarship from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. There was no farewell party, no good luck wishes from my parents. My mother dropped me off at the bus station at 5 a.m. and gave me one sentence: "Don't waste money on silly things again." Meanwhile, Lauren enrolled at Kellerman School of Business, a private university in Connecticut with tuition close to $60,000 a year. Of course, fully paid by our parents. She called home every week, bragging about fancy parties, wealthy sorority sisters, and startup ventures that, shocker, never actually happened. I didn't have time to dream. My schedule was packed with classes and 2 part-time jobs, waiting tables at a cafe by day, freelancing graphic design by night. I learned to eat instant noodles all week just to save up for an iPad for my projects. Sometimes I fell asleep in the library, head resting on my backpack, a colored pencil still in my mouth. 4 years passed in a blur. I graduated with honors. My portfolio was featured in a design magazine in Chicago, and I got a job offer from a creative firm in Portland. When I called my mom to share the news, her response was just 2 words, "Yeah, okay." And Lauren? She returned to Florida right after graduation, unable to find a job that matched her standards. My dad arranged a position for her at a friend's interior design company, a project manager role, even though she'd never managed anything beyond her Instagram account. She even complained about her 6-figure salary, saying it wasn't enough to live decently without bonuses. At 28, I moved to San Diego and opened my own studio, specializing in brand identity design for small businesses. I rented a tiny office near the coast, painted the walls cream, and hung it full of illustrations. I worked nonstop, but every morning, I stepped into that room with pure joy. I never told anyone in the family about my success simply because they never asked. Then, everything changed. In 8 months, my father, Greg, suffered a heart attack while playing golf and died before the ambulance even arrived. 3 months later, my mother, Linda, was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. Lauren called me one February evening, her voice trembling. "Mom's not going to make it. I think you should come back." I booked a flight for the next day. When I arrived, she was only lucid enough to hold my hand. She said in a faint voice, "Don't punish yourself for the things I failed to see." It was the only time I ever saw her cry. She passed away the next morning. The funeral was simple, just as she wished. Lauren took charge of everything, from choosing the flowers to selecting the speakers. I stayed in the back, holding Tyler, my son, in my arms. He was just 6, too young to grasp everything, but he knew Grandma wouldn't be hugging him anymore. 2 weeks after the funeral, we were invited to the lawyer's office for the will reading. Lauren wore a black dress and sunglasses, looking like she was attending an awards ceremony. I sat next to her, clutching my son's hand. The lawyer, Harold Pierce, silver hair, gray suit, opened a thick file and began to read. The main house in Gainesville, bank accounts, 2 investment properties in Tampa, all were left to Lauren. I looked at her, expressionless, as if she already knew. Then Harold looked up and said, "There's also a separate trust fund for Miss Julia Carter. It was established by Mr. Greg Carter and is to be activated upon her 35th birthday." I froze. Lauren turned to me, hissing through her teeth. "Are you kidding? A trust fund? She hasn't taken responsibility for anything." Harold continued. "The trust was created for the child who learned independence early, didn't need help to survive, but may need a foundation to build something lasting once mature." I wasn't sure what hit me harder in that moment, the relief, the pain, or the final crack in whatever thread remained between Lauren and me. I didn't need their money. I'd survived without it. But the fact that my father, even with all his harshness, had recognized something I had long doubted in myself, made my throat tighten. Lauren reacted differently. She shot up, grabbed her expensive purse, and snapped, "This is a joke. You want money? You like money? Just wait." Then she stormed out, the click of her high heels on the marble floor echoing like a declaration of war. I stayed seated, saying nothing. I was thankful to have Tyler beside me, and I knew one day Lauren would come back, not for love, but for the things she always believed were rightfully hers. I gained access to the trust fund on my 35th birthday, a chilly but radiant October morning. After Tyler left for school, I sat in my home office, staring at my computer screen as 6 digits were added to my bank account. I thought I'd feel elated, but the emotion was far more grounded, calm, clear, as if this had always been part of the plan. It just arrived late. I didn't spend a cent on myself. No designer bags, no car upgrades, no plane tickets for a getaway. My life was already in a good place. My design studio was growing steadily. Tyler was bright and well-behaved, and we had a rental apartment near his school and the park. But I also understood one thing clearly: money doesn't sit still for long. If you don't move it, it disappears. That's when I started thinking about real estate. The initial spark came from an article I read on a design forum: "Don't just design brands for others. Own something of your own." From there, I started researching at night after Tyler went to bed: real estate law, LLC structures, how to legally maintain anonymous ownership. I established Pine Circle Holdings, an LLC registered under my private attorney, Mr. Douglas Haynes. He was discreet, courteous, and didn't ask questions, someone I could trust. To keep everything looking natural, I registered the company's office in a small commercial complex in Bakersfield, California, a place where I knew no one. Right around then, a listing popped up in the system for a rental property portfolio in the northern area of Santa Rosa, 13 houses, including an old duplex on Sycamore Street that had belonged to a management company that went bankrupt after the pandemic. I submitted an offer through Pine Circle Holdings and got approved within a week. The irony? That very duplex is the one Lauren is currently renting, while the rest of the portfolio is being used as short-term rentals. It took me 3 days to decide whether or not to tell her. Then I remembered the will reading. I remembered her razor-sharp glare and her ice-cold voice. And I made a choice: stay silent. The less she knew, the less it would hurt. At least for me. I left everything as it was. Lauren continued wiring her monthly rent to the new management company, which was now mine. She would occasionally call to complain about trivial things like how the tree in the yard shed too many leaves or how noisy the dishwasher was. I always listened, always nodded, then had my team handle it within 48 hours. Sometimes I'd see her in the parking lot, still with that half-smile, like I was the poor little sister in need of charity. One time she glanced at Tyler, who was riding his bike around, and said, "Your son's adorable. You should be grateful I'm renting to you below market value." I just smiled and said nothing. She didn't know I'd covered all the maintenance expenses out of my own pocket. Didn't know I was the one listed on the home insurance policy. Didn't know her new fridge, which she asked the manager to replace, was ordered directly by me from Home Depot. I didn't do any of it for my sister. I did it because I knew when you own something, you're responsible for it, no matter how others behave. And more importantly, I wanted to show Tyler an example, a woman who can take care of herself without anyone's permission. I began renovating each house in the portfolio: new floors, fresh paint, more landscaping, energy-efficient plumbing. After 6 months, the portfolio's value had risen by nearly 28%. The profits were reinvested into 3 more properties. As for Lauren, she still believed she was dealing with a company run by some clueless young guys. At one point, she called Douglas's office directly and said, "I'm a VIP tenant. If you people don't fix the back door immediately, I'll be calling the housing authority." Douglas called me back, chuckling. "Your sister seems full of personality," he said. I replied, "You haven't seen her angry yet." I kept letting things play out that way until the day something happened. Something sudden, ruthless, and it shook everything. It wasn't about the house. It was about Tyler. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I made strawberry waffles for breakfast, Tyler's favorite. My 7-year-old, curly-haired, always smiling boy usually woke up before the alarm, chattering about comets, robots, and electric race cars. I adjusted his backpack straps, knelt to retie his shoelaces, then kissed his forehead just as the yellow school bus turned the corner. "I'll tell you all about my space model later, Mom," Tyler shouted as the bus pulled away. I smiled, waving until the bus disappeared behind the line of maple trees, shedding their leaves. Just a few hours later, my entire world flipped upside down. 12:46 p.m. The call came from school. I don't remember answering it, only the sound of Principal Mark's shaky voice on the other end. "Julia, there was an accident on the playground. Tyler fell from the top of the climbing frame. He hit his head hard. We've called an ambulance." I couldn't breathe. It felt like someone had sucked all the air from my lungs. I grabbed my keys, left my phone plugged in, forgot to lock the door. By the time I arrived at Santa Rosa Community Hospital, they had already transferred my son into an ambulance heading for the main medical center in San Francisco, the one with the best pediatric neurology department in the region. I followed the ambulance, foot heavy on the gas, hands trembling. In my mind, I saw Tyler lying motionless on the playground, children screaming, blood spreading on the pavement. I hadn't witnessed it, but my brain painted every detail like a real movie playing on repeat, mercilessly. When I got there, my son was already in emergency surgery. I signed the consent forms without remembering my own name. The only question I managed to ask was, "Is he still alive?" A doctor, his name was Dr. Reynolds, placed a steady hand on my shoulder, his eyes sincere. "We're doing everything we can. There's internal bleeding and signs of brain swelling. We need to operate now to relieve the pressure. It's a complicated case, but Tyler is young. If he responds well to surgery, he has a chance." I nodded. My mind was blank. My heart had dropped something I knew I'd never recover. The surgery lasted nearly 5 hours. I didn't leave the hallway outside the operating room. No food, no sleep, no words to anyone. The first person to show up wasn't Lauren. Not a single family member. It was Mateo, the widowed old man who lived downstairs, the one who once helped me fix my sink. He brought coffee, gently draped his coat over my shoulders. He didn't say a word, just sat there. 4.5 hours later, the doctor came out. His face looked worn, but his voice was steady. We've reduced the intracranial pressure. Tyler is now in intensive care. From here, it's a waiting game. Waiting. That word became my clock. Every heartbeat, every beep of the ventilator, every flicker on the monitor, everything was a countdown. I slept hunched over at Tyler's bedside, my head resting on his hand. He lay still, head wrapped in bandages, his small frame surrounded by wires, IVs, and oxygen tubes. One cheek was bruised, his eyelid swollen, his nose crusted with dried blood. I held his hand and whispered constantly, "I'm here, baby. Mommy's right here. I'm not going anywhere." 2 days passed with no word from Lauren. I had texted her the first night. No reply, no calls, not even a message asking about her nephew. On the third day, as I was eating a cold sandwich in the waiting room, she walked in, navy blazer, softly curled hair, Prada bag in hand. "Well, you look like a mess," she said. I wasn't sure if she meant me or Tyler. I stood, trying to keep from swaying. "What took you so long?" "I've been busy, but I managed to make time." "A single mom like you should understand that, right?" I didn't answer. Rage burned in my chest. But I had no energy to fight. Not now. Not when every hour counted for Tyler's life. Then she added, "Oh, by the way, I need to raise your rent starting next month. Market rates have gone up." I froze. "Are you serious? My son is in the ICU, and you choose now to talk about rent?" She shrugged, smirked. "Business is business. I've got bills, too." I was shaking. Not from fear, but from fury. "How much are you raising it?" "Triple. From $1,900 to $5,700. Non-negotiable." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound echoing like the ventilator behind me. "You can't do that. I'm the landlord. You're the tenant. It's that simple." I didn't argue. I just reached into my purse and pulled out a black envelope tucked in the side pocket, something I carried for emergencies. "This is for you. Read it carefully before you ever open your mouth like that again." Lauren took it, her brow furrowing as she saw the bold print on the ownership certificate. Pine Circle Holdings, owner of 1441 Sycamore Avenue. The blood drained from her face like someone had slapped her. Lauren froze in place, her hands trembling as she flipped through the documents I handed her. Her face drained of all color as her eyes darted over the words confirming the legal ownership under Pine Circle Holdings, the company I indirectly own. This is fake, right?" she rasped, her voice shaky, her gaze unsteady. I looked her straight in the eye. The calm in my voice was sharp as a scalpel. I was no longer the little sister who used to avoid confrontation. "Fake? Call your lawyer. Or better yet, call Douglas Haynes. He's the legal representative for the company. His name, phone number, and office address are all right there." She stammered something, but then Tyler's heart monitor let out a long, piercing beep that silenced us both. He was still lying there, so small and fragile, just like the moment I first held him in the delivery room. I stepped to his bedside, took his hand. The anger I had felt moments ago dissolved into the dry, sterile air of the hospital. "You tried to triple my rent," I said, "I still on Tyler. While my son is unconscious. Do you even realize what you're doing?" "I have my reasons," Lauren said softly, her voice breaking. "I owe money, and they're not waiting anymore." I turned to her. Her eyes were red, but I was used to that calculated kind of weakness. "Over $60,000, she choked out. "I lost everything in my account, and I still owe more. It's loan sharks. If I don't pay up." "You're using a child in the ICU to pressure me over gambling debt?" She clutched the straps of her purse, hands shaking violently. I didn't have a choice. "You're always so composed, so smart, so on time. You've got money, Julia. You've got a company, real estate, and me? No one ever gave me a chance. Our parents always thought I was the golden one, but everything they left behind somehow ended up with you. I laughed, a hollow, joyless sound. You got the majority of the inheritance. I had to wait until I turned 35 to access the trust fund. Meanwhile, you blew through everything on handbags and five-star resorts. That was my money. Exactly. And now you want to take my house, throw me and my son on the street? Lauren stepped closer, her voice lowering. It's not what you think. I just need a little help. You could loan it to me, or you could buy my share of the condo for double. I'll sign the paperwork right now. You don't own the condo, I said, voice flat. I've been the legal owner for 2 years, and you, Lauren, are not my landlord. You're my tenant. Her face paled a second time. Her lashes fluttered. Fear flickered in her eyes. You're evicting me? I paused, then said without hesitation, I'm not like you. I don't use housing to punish family. But don't mistake kindness for weakness. I turned back to the chair, sat beside Tyler, adjusted his oxygen line. Lauren's heels clicked sharply down the hallway as she left. At 3 a.m. that morning, I was still awake beside Tyler's ICU bed. Lauren's documents sat untouched on the table. My head swirled with exhaustion and dread, not because of her, but because I knew she wouldn't stop. The next morning, I received an email from the property management firm, the one I use as a shell for Pine Circle Holdings, stating a request to terminate lease due to tenant's failure to meet revised financial terms set by owner. I opened my laptop, logged into the admin portal, and there it was. Lauren had attempted to override the system through an old Access account using the title representative, attaching a rent increase notice to $6,800 and a warning of eviction within 3 days. I took a deep breath. No panic, no anger. I just replied with one email, attached with updated ownership documents, legal filings, and a CC to my attorney. The message read simply, invalid. Sender has no authority. 2 hours later, Lauren called. I didn't answer. Only when Tyler suddenly suffered a seizure that afternoon, his small body convulsing, dislodging his oxygen tube, doctors rushing for emergency intervention, I heard the sharp echo of her high heels coming down the hospital corridor. I stood in front of the ICU door, eyes locked on hers. I'm busy keeping my son alive, Lauren. If you want to negotiate, come back when you've learned how to be human. The door closed, a slap without hands, but it thundered like a storm. I didn't see Lauren for 3 full days after blocking her at the ICU door. No emails, no texts, no apologies. Truthfully, I wasn't expecting any. Every ounce of me at that point was focused on one thing, Tyler. My son had made it through the critical phase, but he was still semi-conscious, requiring constant monitoring around the clock. Wednesday night, I was adjusting the 4-line in his arm when Natalie, the night shift nurse, peeked in. There's a woman in the waiting room. Says she's your sister. She brought a lawyer with her. I exhaled as if I'd been holding my breath for this exact moment. I asked Natalie to stay with Tyler and stepped out into the hallway. Lauren stood in the lounge area wearing a form-fitting dress, polished heels, and makeup like she was about to appear on national television. Beside her was a thin man with glasses and a leather briefcase. Didn't say a word. I simply folded my arms. Lauren spoke first. I want to clarify a few things about the condo ownership, Julia. I had my lawyer review the documents. I cut her off. Great. I prepared everything as well. I pulled another black envelope from my pocket. This one thicker, notarized with all supporting certifications. I handed it to her lawyer without even glancing at her. He opened the envelope, skimmed the first few pages, and his eyes widened. Pine Circle Holdings, registered in California. Legal ownership dating back to June 2 years ago. Lauren snatched the file from his hands, flipping through it fast. By the 3rd page, a breakdown of assets. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "No, this can't be." I spoke clearly. I purchased the real estate portfolio from the previous management company the moment they listed it. That includes the condo on Sycamore Street where you're currently living. It's registered under the company I founded. Legal, verified. You can check with the county records anytime. You tricked me. Lauren's voice sharpened. You planned this from the start. No, Lauren. I chose silence because I knew that if you ever found out the truth, you'd weaponize our relationship. And I was right. Her lawyer whispered something in her ear. Lauren frowned, then turned to me, trying to maintain control. Fine, then I demand to renegotiate the lease terms. I'm not paying rent to someone who plays dirty behind my back. I raised an eyebrow. Who exactly do you think you're negotiating with? The landlord. Then the landlord requires you to sign a new lease per state regulations. 12-month term. Market rate of $1,950 per month. No unauthorized alterations. No more than 5 days late. Or. I paused, locking eyes with her. Or you vacate the property within 30 days. Lauren tilted her head back and laughed, but her eyes stayed flat. She looked around the hospital hallway where nurses moved quietly past, then leaned in and whispered, "You won't kick me out. Tyler's still in there. People will see you as a monster." I tilted my head, voice steely. "I don't have to kick you out. I'm giving you a choice, and I won't be blackmailed by someone drowning in debt and abusing my trust." I turned to walk away, but then she called out behind me, "You think this is over? You think a fancy envelope and a few pieces of paper make you better than me? Don't kid yourself." I stopped but didn't turn around. "You can keep playing the victim, Lauren, but this time the audience isn't buying it anymore." That night, I returned to the ICU, my hands still shaking, not from fear, but from the emotional whiplash. The confrontation I had imagined 100 times in my life had finally happened under the cold light and sterile air of a hospital hallway. Tyler was still motionless, but when I took his hand, his tiny finger moved just slightly, but enough to make tears spill down my cheeks. I leaned in and whispered, "Mommy kept her promise. Baby, we're not getting kicked out." 3 days after the confrontation at the hospital, I got a message from Lauren. Not an apology, not a threat, just 3 words, "I need to talk." I didn't respond right away. At that moment, Tyler had just opened his eyes again. He was still foggy, his reflexes slow, but his gaze had focus, and he managed to wrap 2 of my fingers in his hand. That was the only thing that mattered to me then. Everything else, even what was unraveling outside, faded into the background. Still, the next evening, I agreed to meet Lauren, not because I needed anything from her, but because I needed to close the last remaining door, the one I hadn't yet shut in my heart. We met in the family counseling room at the hospital, a quiet place with worn leather chairs and the faint scent of antiseptic. Lauren arrived 10 minutes late. Her eyes were sunken, her hair tied up high, revealing the roots she hadn't dyed. No foundation, no mascara, a rare sight. She sat across from me and took a deep breath before speaking. "I called the creditors. They gave me 2 more weeks. After that, I don't know." I looked at her silently. "There's no way I can make it work. No one will lend to me. All my cards are maxed out, and if you plan to sue, I'll lose." Still, I said nothing. She inhaled again, deeper. "But I don't want to leave. At least not like this." I pulled a thin folder from my bag, not many pages, and slid it across to her. A new lease. 1-year term, market rate, $1,950. No late payments, no arbitrary demands. This is a contract for an adult, not a spoiled older sister. Lauren opened the folder, biting her lip. "You're letting me stay?" "No, I'm giving you a chance to live like someone who takes responsibility, but if you don't sign it, I will start the eviction process. I have the evidence and legal grounds to proceed." "And the debt?" I pulled out another sheet, a financial memorandum, even shorter, but sharp like a scalpel. "I'll loan you $50,000 spread over 36 installments with an interest rate lower than the bank's. Monthly payments on time. Non-negotiable and a required condition, you attend weekly financial counseling and join a gambling recovery support group. I'll require confirmation from the organization." Lauren jolted and looked up. "You've been tracking me?" "No, I'm protecting myself and my son. And if you want to change, it starts with being accountable." The room went still. I watched her sign, hands trembling, but she didn't flinch. Part of me ached seeing her like that, but another part, stronger, felt satisfied because I knew I was doing the right thing. After that, everything moved slowly, like the surface of a lake at dawn. Lauren started attending counseling. I received confirmation emails from the support center with dates, times, and signatures from coordinators. She made her first payment on time. No complaints, no delays. I didn't initiate much conversation. Our relationship now was like rain-slicked stones, no longer burning, but still slippery and cautious. Each time she visited Tyler, within visiting hours, she brought something small, a comic book, a buildable toy, or just a bag of pastries from the nearby bakery. No clear apology, but every act was a quiet attempt at making things right. Once I caught her sitting next to Tyler, helping him assemble a spaceship model. Her hands trembled as she inserted the rocket tube into its base. Tyler looked at her and asked, "Aunt Lauren, did you used to like space, too?" She looked up at my son and smiled, really smiled. "I used to think the moon was a giant mint candy, but then I found out it's colder than I thought." I stood by the door, eavesdropping on that exchange. And, for the first time in years, my heart softened. Not from weakness, but from a flicker of compassion that came back, just when it no longer had the power to derail me. Lauren was still Lauren, flawed in many ways. But maybe this time she truly wanted to live differently. And if that's the case, I'm willing to watch from a distance. No expectations, no attachments, but no turning away. Not anymore. For weeks after Tyler opened his eyes, my son was discharged from the ICU and moved to the rehabilitation ward. He was still weak, spoke slowly, and his right hand trembled when holding a pencil. But the spark in his eyes had returned. That mischievous gleam was back, the one that always danced when he talked about spaceships, dinosaurs, or unnamed planets. The first day he sat up and ate a spoonful of porridge, I went completely still for a few seconds. Not because I was emotional, but because for the first time I allowed myself to believe that he might actually be okay. During that time, Lauren visited the hospital regularly, never staying longer than an hour, never saying more than necessary. She was kind, asked how he was doing, sat and drew with Tyler, sometimes even waited until I finished speaking with the doctors so she could fix me a cup of tea. I wouldn't call it change, but effort. And for the first time in my life, I witnessed Lauren making an effort, not for praise, not for appearances, but for herself. That Sunday afternoon, Tyler was discharged. We returned to the duplex on Sycamore Street, where now I wasn't just the legal owner, but the only one who truly controlled my own boundaries. I carried Tyler into the house. I had kept his room exactly the same since the accident. Lauren had helped tidy up while I was at the hospital without anyone asking her to. On the dining table was a card, "Welcome home, Tyler. Chicken porridge and muffins are waiting in the kitchen, Aunt Lauren." Tyler smiled, eyes shining. "Mom, did Aunt Lauren really make porridge? She knows how to cook." I ruffled his hair, laughing. "Maybe for the first time, but I think this porridge is going to be just fine." Life slowly found its rhythm again. Tyler started physical therapy 3 times a week, speech therapy on Wednesday mornings, and part-time home-based learning through a special program for children recovering from brain injuries. He still got tired quickly, but sometimes he had enough energy to build a full Space Explorer model over 2 hours, telling stories about his imaginary crew as he worked. As for me, I returned to the design studio after more than 2 months off. Starting with smaller projects, my clients, people who once only knew me through deadlines and drafts, had become true friends. They sent flowers, books for Tyler, and even chipped in to help me hire a temporary assistant. I realized I wasn't as alone as I had once believed. One evening in early December, Lauren and I sat across from each other on the second-floor balcony. Each of us held a cup of hot cocoa. The cold wind was brisk but pleasant. Tyler was asleep, and his nightlight cast a soft glow of star shapes through the window. Lauren spoke first, her voice softer than usual. "Do you think I'm faking it?" I paused for a few seconds. "No, I think you're relearning how to live honestly, and that's never easy." She nodded, eyes distant. "I spent 15 years acting like the world owed me something, but in the end, all that was left were the debts chasing me all the way to the hospital doors." I didn't respond. But for the first time, I saw something unfamiliar in Lauren. Not weakness, not arrogance. It was surrender. "I'm learning to pay things back one by one," she said, still looking toward the low fence beyond the yard. "Not just the money, but honor, trust, opportunity." I took a small sip of my cocoa. "What about what you owe yourself?" She looked at me. It took her a while to answer. "To stop playing the perfect big sister, to stop resenting you for being stronger than I thought, and to stop trading truth for pity." I didn't know how long I had waited to hear those words. Maybe since I was 11, the year my mother said, "Why can't you be more gentle like your sister?" We sat in silence for a long time, like we were both hearing ourselves clearly for the first time. That Christmas, for the first time in years, Lauren and I hung lights on the duplex balcony together. Tyler, wearing a knit hat, directed us like a NASA commander in the snowy yard. That house, once a symbol of tension and deception, had become a place of renewal. Not because of some miracle, but because of boundaries, because of forgiveness with conditions, and because of my decision not to turn back. I used to think a person's worth came from who acknowledged them. But now I understand real worth is knowing you no longer need that acknowledgement. And this next chapter I'm about to write? This time, I'm holding the pen. My story isn't just about betrayal or forgiveness. It's about awakening. From a daughter who was overlooked to a mother who now protects her boundaries and self-worth. I've learned that kindness doesn't mean submission, and forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. In the real world, sometimes the harshest events open the clearest windows, showing who truly cares and who only shows up when they need something. From there, we learn to live with sovereignty, with a clear mind and a dignity that cannot be bought. What do you think about Julia's journey and Lauren's transformation? Do they deserve forgiveness or firmer boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below.